My clients still experience feelings of guilt, feelings of, I must be bad if I said no. I'm supposed to say yes. I'm obliged to do this. I feel bad. So we explore that as well. I take it very slowly because this is unfamiliar, like you said. They're conditioned to always do and provide and put their needs aside so that someone else could be happy to avoid arguments, fights, verbal abuse, physical abuse, possibly. And so that fear is very real.
Welcome to Coach Soul, the podcast where we explore therapeutic ways to the best versions of ourselves. I'm your host, Steve Hudgins. I'm a licensed professional counselor dedicated to helping you navigate life's challenges. In each uplifting episode, we'll discuss mental health, relationships, self-care, emotional well-being, and personal growth. Join me and with my co-host, Kenya Evelyn, a therapeutic life coach, where sometimes we'll even welcome special guests to our show that share their experience and expertise. So let's embark on this transformative path together and discover a healthier and happier you. Hey, welcome back to Coach Soul. Linda is our special guest. I call her the guru of narcissism. And so, she's a coach that is specialized in this area because she's lived it. And to me, Linda, I believe life experience is what helps us to be the best coaches and therapists that are out there, and that we're not so much book-driven, but life-driven. Linda, welcome to the show. Can you tell our audience and viewers a little bit about who you are?
Thank you, Dr. Steve. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much. My name is Linda Meier. I am a healing and recovery coach for survivors of emotional and narcissistic abuse. I have experienced it firsthand for decades at a close proximity. Healing doesn't happen suddenly. The first thing that I did for my healing journey was to create space and distance. And from there, I was able to see the different worlds that was outside of the narcissistic dynamic. And I continued my journey. I have a book that is in the works as well. I hope to have that completed by the end of the year and then published for next year. You can reach me on LinkedIn. You can connect with me. You can follow me. You can subscribe to my newsletters. They're published every week. And I look forward to hearing from you, and send me a DM to say hello.
Thanks, Linda. When we think about Valentine's Day, podcasts typically talk about love in the air, about, ways that we should or shouldn't date and things of that nature. But oftentimes I feel like we don't talk about relationships in general. We look through our world through the lens of attachment. We look through the lens of hurt. We come from a childhood of hurt. And so, off mic, we were talking about, the decades that you had in narcissism. And, sometimes, we think of majority, of not trying to put a gender to it, but typically men have the more susceptibility of narcissism. Females are more the borderline tendency nature. But if we strip this away, Linda, you experienced years of narcissism. And who was that by?
This was my mother. She was my primary care provider. I am the youngest of 4 kids. I was given the role as a scapegoat. And so I started to pick out inconsistencies in parenting, and the dynamics were different with each family member. And I started questioning her and challenging and looking for different answers, looking for clarification. And that was met with a lot of resistance and challenge, anger. and verbal abuse and some physical abuse. And so just me watching the patterns, gathering that information, I picked up that something was not quite right. And so as a result, I was given the role of the scapegoat.
And I appreciate that because that is a term that I'm using in my upcoming book. I don't want to release the title just yet, but it's dealing with that type of situation. And you'll learn more when I announce the forthcoming of my book as well. And Linda, growing up, we think the way that we're treated by our parents is normal. And then we try to, as we grow into adults, sometimes it sticks with us as normal. And so we gravitate towards spouses that are similar. When you think about what you went through with your own mom, what ways did you identify, hey, my mom is a narcissist? How do you define narcissism for you?
For me, a narcissist, it's a personality disorder. And from my understanding, from my studying, it starts in childhood.
Right.
And there's something here that doesn't click. It doesn't mature. And usually, mainly, it happens when the child is a young toddler, around the age of 2 or 3. So they fail to realize that mom, usually, or dad, the primary care provider, exists as their own individual being. And so if mommy doesn't come to me right away, mommy's busy, mommy always says no, mommy's doing something else, I'm busy, I'm crying, I need her. And so the child fails to reflect and learn that they're going to be okay. They don't need mommy to fill up their feelings, their emotions, to care for them. And so that progresses into young age, school age, adulthood, etc. That is the explanation that I saw firsthand because I learned of my mother's upbringing, and to me that makes sense. And she failed to realize that she is our whole person. She is responsible for her emotions and feelings and frustrations and hardships. And it's not for us to carry that for her.
When you
So we
think
were
about
parented, yes.
Yeah, when you think about what you're sharing, I can identify with that because, my parents were married for 60 years and leaving the house, I began to realize my own personality and things of that nature, that it created an anxious attachment for me. And sometimes with narcissists, that's typically what happens because we want someone that's not available. And oftentimes, like your mother, mine was go play in your room. I don't got time. I want to sew. I'm going to clean. I don't got time to interact with you. And so oftentimes it becomes dismissive and it's hurtful for this child. When you think about, females being narcissism, when you talk to your clients, what ways do you help them to identify the situations that they're in?
With my coaching, I focus on mostly the emotions, the triggers. And so I listen to their story and I pick out the words that are more meaningful. I watch their reaction. I watch their body language. So what I do is I tell them that they can speak freely with me, that this is a safe space, that I want to hear their opinions. I want to hear their thoughts. And if they disagree with me, I want to know that. If they're not happy about something, I want to hear it. And so I'm giving them the acknowledgement and the permission to speak. Growing up in that conditioned dynamic, you lose your voice, you lose your identity, you lose who you are meant to become. You're supposed to be given carte blanche to discover who you are, your preferences. And so with my clients, I tell them to speak freely and I want to hear what they have to say. And then I guide them. I ask specific questions about the past. I don't dwell too long on it. I want to make progress and move forward in small steps. And
Sure.
so I gauge their reaction, I gauge their emotions, and then I pause when I see that they're becoming emotional. And then I want to explore that further because obviously there is a reaction that's building up.
And necessarily, narcissism is just not with a parent. You have a spouse or a significant other that can take that role that's there and they squash your voice. And so when you think about squashing your voice and you say, well, talk to me. And I was like, okay, Linda, I don't know where to start. I'm just, it's a unknown territory when you give somebody a voice that doesn't know how to speak. And so when you think about relationships and the dynamics, oftentimes we get ourselves into trouble in relationships because we don't find or stand in presence of ourselves to have that voice. So someone who's gone through this narcissistic abuse, what do you say to your clients that is the most important for them to try to hold on to or try to figure out?
They are important. I tell them that they are loved, they are complete, they are whole. It's okay to set boundaries. Self-care is important. Looking after the family, the husband and the kids is important, but they are important also. So they need to look after themselves as well. They need to carve time to do what they need to do. For example, driving the husband to work and throwing the kids in the van just because he doesn't want to take the bus or drive himself. Maybe on occasion, of course, that could take place, but is it absolutely necessary each time? No, that's a lot of work. So I like to ask them more questions about why they feel they need to, if the husband has asked them to do that kind of work. So I deal with setting some gentle boundaries, saying soft no, not giving in to the urgency of the matter. Not everything needs to be done right away. It's good to pause. It's good to say, maybe I'll get back to you. And that's a perfectly acceptable answer. Not everything is yes, absolutely.
But, as we know, the human magnet syndrome is this narcissist and a codependent behavior because the codependent wants to please. It doesn't want to disappoint. And so oftentimes you're saying, okay, you can have boundaries in this relationship, but then it's like, wait a minute. What if I'm not allowed to have boundaries, but at the same time, I don't want to make my partner mad who's a narcissist? Is that what you kind of experience with your own mom and dealing with that type of episode?
Absolutely. Absolutely. My clients still experience feelings of guilt, feelings of, I must be bad if I said no. I'm supposed to say yes. I'm obliged to do this. I feel bad. So we explore that as well. I take it very slowly because this is unfamiliar, like you said. They're conditioned to always do and provide and put their needs aside so that someone else could be happy to avoid arguments, fights, verbal abuse, physical abuse, possibly. And so that fear is very real. And so the conditioning starts early on, and the narcissist tests boundaries. And so the more that you comply, the happier they are. But as for the other individual, they end up losing themselves. And they're taught that if they step out of this role, something will happen. And so we try to avoid that. And so we give in to keep the peace and to remain small, because being small means that everything's happy. Everyone is happy. There's no fighting. There's no arguing. Everything is good, but it isn't.
Do you think there's any differences between a parent who's a narcissist versus being married to one?
I think there are many, many similarities. I don't see any differences.
Right.
Both individuals are looking for the same goal. The narcissist is looking for the obedience, the admiration, the love, the attention. And the victim is looking for the love, the admiration, the recognition. And it's not met because it's not a mutual relationship. One has the parenting role and the other is given the obedient child role.
And that's a good point to figure out, because I think that's key, and when you think about, here we are, it's Valentine's Day, that dopamine hits our brains, and that's why I call it, we become dopes when we fall in love or think we're in love or whatever, because it just blinds us to really looking at things under a microscope, so to speak. Not that we want to tear apart the relationship, but I think there's key things that we can identify before involving ourselves in getting into a romantic relationship. So, Linda, you've had this history with this parent. Oftentimes we are conditioned, if you will, or imprinted, so to speak, by our parent with narcissists. In what way did you not marry into a narcissistic marriage?
I knew what I didn't want. I saw what was out there. I saw what I had experienced. And I did have past relationships with narcissists. I didn't marry any of them. Sometimes I'm the one who said goodbye. Other times they were the ones to say goodbye, and that was fine. It was sad. But in the end, it was like a blessing. For me, recognizing the patterns, the dynamics, that was very eye-opening. And I married someone who is giving and loving and who listens. He supports. He's allowed to disagree with me. I'm allowed to disagree with him. We respect our space. We respect our boundaries. We don't need to like the same things. We don't need to dislike the same things. I have my circle. He has his circle. And then we reconnect at the end of the day or in the mornings, so there's respect.
Okay, Linda, I've got to ask, you have this intuitiveness about yourself, and it's like, okay, what about our female audience out here? Oftentimes I hear, well, I'm invested. I don't know if I want to get out. There are some that stay in the marriage because they're afraid to get out and get away from this because, oh my gosh, I can't support myself. How am I going to do this by myself? So they wrap themselves up into this fear mindset. What would you say to our female audience about how oftentimes they feel stuck, but they really aren't stuck?
They're not stuck. They are experiencing a dynamic that is challenging. I tell my clients to listen to their heart and their voice. They need to pick out the patterns. They need to recognize the patterns. Is my significant other under a lot of stress? Are they experiencing something that could be temporary? Are they experiencing difficulties in the home or at work? It could be anything. The thing is to not give up simply because they may argue a lot. It's not pleasant, but it's how they handle the conflict. How do they make you feel?
What about breadcrumbing? The gas
Breadcrumb.
comes with it,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
How are they to recognize these things when that dopamine hits and we're so enamored by love? What ways can women to identify these type of things so they don't get entrapped in the charismatic way, the charming, like a snake charmer is the way I look at it, that stands and plays that snake is charmed. So what suggestions can you have there for our female listeners?
There is definitely a love bombing stage with a narcissist, and basically it's broken down into 4 steps. Others will say there's 5 steps, 10 steps. I look at it in 4 steps. There's the love bombing, the breadcrumbing, absolutely. They're charming. They make you feel like you're the most amazing human being. They compliment you. They say things like, we look good, so good together. And so that's kind of a trap, that door that they're letting you know they can't help but expose themselves in some ways. So the pattern is there. And then the next step is the dismissive, the gaslighting. They're testing your boundaries. They're testing you to see, are you going to call them out or let it go? If you let it go, great, green light. If you call it out, you get a reaction from them. Gauge that reaction. Are they going to deny it? Are they going to say, I was only joking? Look at the repeated patterns, because if someone's truly genuine in their apology, you'll see it. They'll learn from that mistake and they won't repeat it. The next step is the hot and cold. So they're taking that test even further. They'll shower you with attention and then they'll hit you with a backhanded compliment. So they're taking that dismissiveness even further. And the final step is the discard. After all the arguing, after all the challenging behavior that they've received from their partner, they found someone else. They have no use for you anymore, but they continue to keep tabs on you. They hover. So they're always looking at who's out there, what do I need? And so their needs come first, and they're not showing you the love that should be mutual. They don't respect you. Yeah.
Yeah, we get about 4 or 5 minutes left. Would you say that oftentimes that when you think about narcissistic, that they are the rescuer? They want to come in and save your world from whatever. And so oftentimes they gravitate, to that episode of trying to rescue a female or any male or whatever you want to call it in gender. Thing is that I think we get caught up in that moment because it's like starving. We're out in a desert and all of a sudden we come into water and we just want to drink up the whole pond of water because we're thirsty. And then it's the after effects of feeling sluggish because we did it too much. I see relationships that way, is that sometimes if we're starving for love and affection, we gravitate. It's like, okay, Valentine's Day is here. You're just meeting this person, is there caution if a person meets, let's say a female and a male meets or whatever, a couple just meets, right? And he brings flowers on the first date. Is that an indicator of anything?
If a man brings me flowers, I will accept them graciously, whether they're my husband or not. I will accept them. I won't question it. If I was in the dating world and my date brought me flowers, I would accept it. I would make a note of it.
Why would you make a note of it?
I would make a note of it. I would ask. I would ask myself, what is it that he is looking for? We're having a pleasant evening. We're going dinner and dancing, and we're going to a piano lounge. That's lovely. He was paying attention when he asked me what my choices would be for a date. Good. It's not an indicator that someone is a narcissist. If someone does bring you flowers, accept it. Make a note of it. don't mention it to him. Don't ask him why. If it repeats again out of the blue, wonderful. If he's made a mistake and you've had a little disagreement and he brings you flowers again, accept it. But with the apology, there needs to be changed behavior. There needs to be a mutual understanding of what the apology is for. And the flowers are not there to buy your silence.
There we go.
Yeah.
That's the thing, is that we need to be aware. Not that I'm knocking down, men providing flowers. Great, if that's what you want to do. But at the same time, we're in this weekend of love is in the air, flowers, chocolates, bears, you name it, probably tigers and such. Oh my, right? It's that kind of a thing. And we get carried away. And oftentimes gifts can get us carried away. That's the whole point that I was trying to make. It doesn't indicate one thing or another of what one person does, but just be aware and not allowing the gift giving or whatever happens this weekend for Valentine's Day to overshadow your judgment. And, if you feel like, hey, he talks too much about himself or she talks about too much about herself, as an indicator. And so, Linda, you and I think we both have some history of our own mothers being narcissistic and what they do. We talked off mic. You haven't spoken to yours in 10 years. I've tried to reconcile with my mom. And I even tried to say, look, find a therapist of your choosing. And I got no response. Instead, what I was met with was she didn't tell me a father had passed away, didn't tell me that he was sick, going to hospice care. And when I finally got notification, it was through her attorney that said that we have no legal obligation to him. So that closed the door, and knowing that she didn't care, she didn't love me, because any parent who says, I love you, would work through issues and not slam the door. And so oftentimes that is what narcissists tend to do. If we don't feed into them, they often disown us. And so what I'm trying to tell you, audience, is the fact that if you can make amends, but in this amends that you're making, don't allow yourself to be railroaded either. Be aware that there's healing that can be taking place. You just don't want to be taken advantage of. And so often I think narcissists have that advantage of taking, advantage of those moments. Linda, is there anything you would like to add before we close out?
I want to thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to speak with you and to share my story. I learned more from you, from your story today. Hello to everyone. And also, healing is possible. Reach out for support, reach out for therapy and coaching. Healing is important because it does change your mindset, and you deserve to be loved as you are and not to be molded into someone else to please them, to keep the silence.
Like you became the scapegoat, I became the black sheep because I found some healing and changed. And I'm ecstatic about where I am in my life and being able to find that healing. And just like you, we're helping other people to heal. So don't be afraid to reach out to a veteran of life, so to speak, that can help guide where you are. Linda, is a pleasure in meeting with you and connecting with you. She will, like she says, she can be connected through LinkedIn for now. She's working on other things in social media that you can contact her. Again, take care. God bless. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode on Coach Soul. As we wrap up, we want to remind our listeners of a few key points. This podcast is for informational purposes only and does not substitute professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. The content shared here is based on professional opinion but may not apply to everyone's situation. Always consult with a qualified healthcare provider before making changes to your mental health care. If you're in a crisis, please seek immediate professional help or contact our crisis hotline. Listening to this podcast does not create a therapist-client relationship or personal advice. Please consult with your licensed mental health professional in your area. Remember, your mental health journey is unique. While we hope this information is helpful, it is crucial to work directly with the qualified personnel for your specific needs. Thank you again for tuning in to Coach Soul, and we'll see you next time.